My name is Aubrey. I'm a co-founder and CTO at a company called the New Computer Corporation. And today I'm going to give you kind of a high-level introduction and a case study about the Circle APIs and why we gravitated that way in the first place, and what I think kind of the implications are. So if you are a CTO or a strategy person or a technologist or an engineer, I hope to at least seed enough knowledge that you can pursue your curiosity and see if it's a good fit for you. Has anybody seen the Circle APIs or interacted with them in any way? A couple of people? That's cool. I'm going to be very gentle and high level. I'll kind of show you what the results are more than the nitty gritty of actually making the calls. So at NCC, we are fundamentally builders. We're not a DeFi play. We don't make any NFTs. We're not an exchange. We use Web3 to create tools and experiences. And then underneath, we provide familiar, straightforward APIs that you can use to create experiences as well. We're all geezers, internet geezers. And by that I mean we've been through a lot of these kind of cycles, and I think that our perspective is pretty unique. The Web3 effort is not our first rodeo collectively. And in my case, I've really spent my whole career, which is something freaky like 25 years, building and scaling like web-based experiences for people you've heard of, like Apple and Google and Sony and Cirque du Soleil and stuff like that. So I kind of bring this perspective of mass user adoption, ease of use, and representing the interests of the user as a first priority. And then we kind of come around to blockchain interactions and transactions and Web3 as a second thing we want to support. Being in the industry for a long time, if you're like me, you start to notice some patterns. If you zoom out, I think you'll see sort of general cycles of kind of innovation and experimentation in these kind of free-for-all times, followed by a curve of adoption and commoditization. And we saw that in the super old days with, like, you know, when I was a kid, I was on bulletin board systems, and as people got really passionate about connecting that way, there was just something about it that people like AOL and CompuServe kind of got in there and commoditized and built huge businesses just around that initial moment of connectivity and giving you like a dial-up modem. As connectivity became a little more accepted and generally available, we had the kind of Web 2 experience where we had another period after, if you remember, there was a little bit of a hiccup in 2000 where the dot-com boom came to an abrupt end. But that spawned this wonderful period of innovation, and because the commoditization had taken a big breath, people could start to experiment and play around, and it was almost like the consumers were looking the other way for just a second, and so we got a chance to really like dig in and play. And then they came back because we invented things like good web search, file sharing, sorry, lost my place. Social networking, small bits and pieces that went on and struck a nerve with people and came into the culture in a way that allowed that second big commoditization dip to exploit and take advantage of. And we ended up in the 2010s with like the Facebooks and the Snapchats and the mobile revolution, and essentially a lot of centralization over people's data and their interests, and a bunch of big companies kind of cornered the market on people and exploited that cornered market in a bunch of ways that we really didn't like. And that has led to what I think is happening now, which is the big push toward decentralization and what we call Web3. Now, I've marked sort of where I think we are, that little red dot. But if you look historically, the adoption on Web3 is not really happening the way that I would have expected, given the past patterns. We've had solid decentralized ledgers, we've had smart contracts, we've had a lot of the basic tools available for a pretty long time, like many years. But the users are still a little bit hesitant. I've heard a lot of people talking, even at this conference and at like the last few conferences we've been to, about what's going on, like why are we in this hesitant period? The early web started without an empowering financial model, and that got us into trouble later. But this era is, I think, we're a little bit stuck in the empowering financial model, and we're having some trouble getting out of that initial phase. I hear this kind of batted around a lot, this idea that, well, the markets are unstable, and that, some large players are making unforced errors, and so on the consumer side, there's some hesitancy, and it feels scary. And I think that's true, but I go back to this. Historically, in the first few waves, almost nothing worked. I mean, in the early days of Twitter, it was down every 48 hours. Like, it was not a stable or good experience, but it didn't slow adoption because there was something going on with that wave of innovation that led to passionate interaction and fun. And it's probably worth noting that, in the 2010s, nobody really innovates during boom time. That's probably another talk, but we spent a long time sort of stuck in a pattern, which I'm very relieved to be coming out of. My personal feeling is that the problem is actually this. I think that the blockchain workflows and the Web3 workflows are still too daunting. My friend was saying the other week that Web3 is sort of like a city that only has a financial district and maybe some art galleries, but like even the finance people don't go to the financial district for fun. Like, we solved that part, but we need to make a concerted effort to reach out to regular people with regular workflows and reintroduce them to this idea of the fun part and the connectivity part and the creativity part and the part that they're passionate about. It was nice to see the NFT thing happen, but I think it kind of just went up and came down without sustainable workflows that came out the other side. So as a CTO myself, this is kind of where Circle comes in. This is kind of our surface area for Circle. When we first encountered Circle, the idea of using USDC just as a mental model, both for consumers and for our own developers, it was really revelatory because we had spent a lot of months building oracles that would look at current token prices and try to square what that really meant in real value to people. And it was a real struggle and a really kind of a lame workflow. And then we came across the stable coins. We looked at all the stable coins, and then we realized Jeremy Allaire was doing Circle, and we're like, that's probably the one that's going to work. And it really changed the way that we thought about transactions and interacting with the user, and we could just start talking in terms of currency that people understood the value of, and talking about transactions and fees and costs in ways that people they already had a mental model. They didn't have to be like, okay, it's 0.004 ETH, and go and figure out what that meant for them as a regular person. Again, it's just too hard. And then earlier this year, we kind of stumbled across the early versions of the Circle APIs, and we've been using other on-ramps and exchanges. There's a bunch of services, like everyone's been kind of running at this problem, but we were already clearing transactions with USDC, and we saw the APIs, and we were like, oh man, this is actually like Stripe plus a token exchange all in one go with a single, for us, a single API that we can just bake into our deal. Why we care about that is because at our company, we're trying to make that same familiar mental model, but in the application layer. And we're doing that both for consumers and for developers. We set about, when we started this company, to do a bunch of consumer stuff. And then we found that there was just no infrastructure under us. There was like, all of the basic things that any Web 2 developer expects to be there are not there. So we had to kind of pause on the big plan, come back and descend a layer down into what we call decentralized APIs. And the idea of a decentralized API is, on the front side, it's a very familiar thing to any web developer. It's a RESTful interface. And then on the back side, we facilitate an L1 transaction for you. And we do a bunch of fun stuff, like we can represent a user and that user's intent in a smart contract that has an address that proxies that intent. So if you look on Blockchain Explorer, you still see what that user did, but we don't have to go all the way to the front side and ask the user to sign a transaction necessarily. We can set up a recipe in advance. So if you think about the case of, say, media streaming, I as a user can say, I'm okay to stream X amount of media in X amount of time, and I'm gonna just pre-approve the system to approve all those 1 cent 0.01 USDC transactions. If we exceed that, please stop and let me know. So the user is still maintains that sense of agency and the kind of wallet mechanism that we like about decentralization, but their experience can be, I'm just playing movies on a mobile app, and we keep the UI familiarity. We build on the Algorand chain, which is, for us, because we don't need the halo effect of the L1, it's a really perfect choice for us. We have 6,000 TPS, we have finality in less than 4 seconds. We can actually run transactions that the user can wait for, and then we confirm with a final, which is cool, and I'm gonna demo some of that. And then we do all our sort of clearing of payments in and out through USDC, and then we're tooling around with EuroC and the next stuff that they're gonna do. We play in 3 basic areas that, if you're paying attention to the other sine wave, we want to pick up at that top of that curve and capture creativity and innovation, and we want to support those innovations moving into culture and experience. And then we want to be there in the latter part when those important emotional, cultural, creative experiences become more commodity business workflows. So we have a whole family of kind of tightly vertically integrated products. Product is too strong a word. They're really feature sets that you as a third party can build a front end on, or we have built several front ends on, and we work in that kind of hybrid model. And the Circle APIs kind of come in at the very end to just be your on-ramp, off-ramp, the way that we get from credit card to crypto, essentially. And because I'm a crazy person, I am going to attempt to show you this in action on a crummy Wi-Fi network. So if you scan this, I'll give you just a minute, and then I'm gonna switch over as well. It should take you to a URL that we framed up that just does a few simple workflows, but I think it is a good illustration of how this actually works in practice to the end user. Pay attention to things like transaction time, how long the spinner spins, things like that. Hopefully the Wi-Fi holds up with this number of people. It did last time. We'll see. Everybody got it? Everybody that cares. All right. I'm going to just switch over here. All right. There's my nerd window. So on your mobile device, you should see something kind of like this. And I'll just show you some of the lifecycle things that we do and call out where our product and our runtime hands off to the Circle runtime. The first thing that we do here is connect. The connection is historically done by a browser plugin, or you bounce over to a dedicated mobile app to do your connection. That mobile app has to establish a network connection. You have to maintain that network connection. In real life, this sucks. So like if you are trying to get drunk people at a football game to do these workflows, they don't. They give up. And we tried a bunch of different strategies, like with Wallet Connect. We tried integrated web-based wallets, and we finally were just like, all right, screw it. We're going to make our own. So what you see in this gray area is called Inky. This is one of our products. It is an embeddable, we call it a micro wallet, because it's not designed to be a full end-to-end multi-capable wallet. It's just designed to facilitate a transaction for you in the moment, generally in real life, at some kind of an activation or a concert or a conference or wherever you happen to be. The advantage of this, just as a mostly technical web person, when I saw wallets come in as browser extensions, it was really distressing to me because browser extensions are like the Wild West. They don't have a security model, particularly on Chrome. The security model on the Mozilla side was a little better, but they, about 3 years ago, tore that down and adopted the Chrome way. So, and a lot of people don't realize that, like, if you install a browser extension, it can see everything in every page you load all the time without any indication to the user. So if you're so unlucky as to install, like, something that looked like MetaMask but wasn't, the attack vectors are infinite. The other problem that I have is that the dApp really shouldn't share any memory space with the wallet if you want to do it right, because you're just one wayward malicious script in your dApp can also move the opposite way and start observing things in the memory space of the browser extension. It's a bummer. So what we did is we embedded our wallet in an iframe. Now, people spent most of the 2000s exploiting iframes to do really terrible things with cross-site scripting. But as a result, all of the browsers have hardened the hell out of the iframe mechanism, and now iframes sit in a memory space that shares nothing whatsoever other than a messaging API with wherever they're embedded. The dApp, in this case, can't read anything, including the text or even the URL of this embedded iframe. And vice versa. The iframe can't look at what context it's in. It can't infer anything from its embedded context. I'm going to see if I get lucky and can remember my password and see it from a distance. The other thing that I like about this strategy is that it helps the web do web things that are familiar to the end user. So password, your browser can remember your password. If you're on a mobile device, like on iOS, you can key the password to your Face ID. So you can have had any amount of beers at the football game and still re-authenticate to the wallet in a very passive way. We're really just, if we do nothing else, it's just to encourage drinking. So I have a little sample frame here. This is, say we wanted to allow people on site to become a member of whatever this event was. And then that membership would get them cheap water or free access to a backstage thing or whatever it was. But we couldn't count on anybody going through this workflow in advance. We really have to support it on site. So we have them authenticate in that way. If they don't have an account, they just make one. You pick a password. It feels very familiar. What's happening behind the scenes, though, is it's making you a wallet. And the only thing that's passed back to the dApp context is the wallet address, which, if you're a capable dApp, you can get everything you need from the address. Just go look on chain, ask the indexer. And here's an interface where we're saying, OK, we're going to charge you some money. Give us your credit card. Please do not put a real credit card number in here. Just leave it as it is. I'm going to hit submit on this. And right now, I'm calling to the Circle API that says, hey, I have a new user. they want to submit a credit card transaction, and they want to get a token that symbolizes their membership. And if you do it from scratch, you will go through one more step than I went through, but we can then do fun things like remember your membership status when you come back, and hold on to your kind of tokenized status and token gate anything in the real world. We can do that on an NFT, on one of many token. We can kind of mix and match that stuff. So if you have this NFT and this token, you can get higher access. And we do a lot of kind of mixing and matching for various partners and activations. Similar to other wallets, you can also just disconnect, which takes you out of context, wipes everything that the iframe knew about you and wipes out the iframe, cleans up, and you're back as a fully anonymized user. God. Hopefully that worked for some of you, but at least you saw it work here if it didn't. It's worth noting that on the, sorry, I have to lean over here and click this. Over here on the Circle side, this is our custodial Circle account. And here is the transaction that I ran from the front end. And you can go in and inspect these transactions. And the fun thing, this logs me out very aggressively. Give me just a sec, I'm gonna come back in. Again, using that cool browser feature. So Circle APIs will give you the kind of code level access into this, but then the rest of the management feels very, very traditional financial fintech. You get balance, you get ledgers on money in, payments, all the kind of API activity. You can inspect a given payment and see where it came from. You can return it or refund it. It's very advanced. The APIs are coming along, but are super workable and ready to rock today. And it's a, we replaced basically 4 different tools where we were, onboarding crypto with a credit card and wire, and then bringing the native crypto over into exchange for a token. Just the amount of one-stop simplicity that we get from this workflow is just huge. And the other cool thing is that these are USDCs. So any balance that accumulates in your user account, you can use the APIs to move that or convert it or send it to another exchange's API. They're just regular USDCs. You can also move them across chain. I don't know if you saw the announcement on Wednesday. So like I think we all know the future is kind of collaborative and multi-chain. And so it's a nice mechanism to move value chain to chain as you need. All right, let's see if I can get this going again. I don't have a long session today. I want to leave you with this sentiment. I saw this written on a wall at a music festival, and it was signed with a Twitter account that doesn't exist. So I don't know who made this up, but when thinking about it in a Web3 context, it's something that I really believe. The early days of the web were extremely non-competitive. They were collaborative and innovative, and stuff that worked won. And we've been in this long period where things that are pretty crummy have won, not because of their technical merit or their good user interface or whatever, but just because of the leverage of very large corporations that are kind of pushing that stuff down the pipe. On day one, I think we saw engineers from 4 different chains sitting together, kind of like a little bit uncomfortably, but I would love to see more of that. Like every chain has a value and is killer at a couple of things, and I think that we have to let ourselves move out of this idea that the chains are going to kind of be competing, or there's like, I don't think there has to be a winner. I think that we can live in a world where there are 6 or 8 chains, and each one is great for doing this thing or that thing. You transact the place that it makes the most sense. Maybe you persist value on another chain, and the user doesn't see any of that. They don't think about it any more than they think about where the electricity comes from or how the TV works. Or I use the credit card all the time. I have no idea how those payments get processed, and users shouldn't have to worry about it. They should just make sure that we should make sure that they find their assets where they left them, and that their experience feels safe and familiar. So I'm Aubrey Anderson. I'm going to be hanging around for a little bit. If you have questions, I think taking questions from stage is really awkward because we don't have a mic, but please feel free to find me and ask me anything you want.